Following the defeat of Germany after World War II, thousands of prisoners were discovered in concentration camps, but so also were other shocking forms of human cruelty. So on April 12, 1945, General Dwight Eisenhower of the Allied forces visited one of the concentration camps and was so overwhelmed by what he saw that he sent a cable to the head of Joint Chiefs in Washington describing the horrors and saying that he had made the visit deliberately in order to be in a position to give first-hand evidence in case there develops a tendency in the future for them to be described merely as propaganda. This was such a concern, and this was back in 1945. And so it was important to General Eisenhower for there to be documentation of those crimes. And so he later sent another cable to Washington requesting for journalists and members of Congress to come bear witness to those atrocities at the camps and expose them to the world, which they did. Then we later saw during the World War II trials known as the Nuremberg trials, how video evidence played a major role at the proceedings. It is actually said that the human impact of the visual evidence was a turning point in the Nuremberg trials because it brought the Holocaust into the courtroom. Now, fast forward to the 20th of October 2020. Nigerian youth were out protesting against police brutality and were demanding for the government to scrap a unit of its police force called the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, which had been responsible for many atrocities against young Nigerians. Now, Lagos State was one of the main hubs for the protesters, and in order to terminate the momentum already being gained by the protests, the Lagos State government declared a curfew on the 20th of October 2020. But that night, that very same night, while the protesters were still gathered at the Lekki toll gate in Lagos State, government's security forces arrived on the scene and started shooting at the unarmed protesters. In that moment, Catherine Obianuju, also known as DJ Switch, began an Instagram live, which exposed to the world shocking scenes from the Lekki toll gate, including how protesters were tending to gunshot wounds. And DJ Switch, speaking later in an interview about why she started filming, said, "I thought I was going to die. So let's make sure the world sees this, so they don't change the story and tell people that we killed ourselves. I didn't want us to die in vain." Can you see the semblance between General Eisenhower's strategy and that of DJ Switch? They both relied on the visual documentation that they could get because they desperately needed to preserve the truth. But just as was feared by DJ Switch, attempts were made to oppose the truth of what happened on that night. And so through multiple denials, the government tried to change the narrative. But thanks to the video evidence, the Nigerian military, which had initially denied deploying its troops, later admitted that soldiers were actually deployed to Lekki toll gate. The same military initially denied firing at protesters, but later backtracked and said, oh, only blank bullets were fired into the air. And I get it, so many young Nigerians still feel disappointed that full accountability has not yet been achieved for the victims of the 20th of October 2020, especially by way of prosecutions. And while this may be true, what is also very true is the significance of the available visual evidence from that period, which cannot be overemphasized. And this is what can be relied on for future pursuits of justice. We have seen over the decades several instances where, through video evidence, perpetrators of human rights violations were held to account. Even though I must also admit that it sometimes takes a depressingly long time. But I hope to share some of such cases in my subsequent videos. I will also be speaking to the rising challenges confronting video evidence in this age of artificial intelligence. And so if you're interested in stuff like that, stick around and get subscribed. And if you've got questions, please feel free to reach out. Let's get to work.